Glad that you're here. If you're a guest with us, let me introduce Brian Patrick Connolly. I forgot your middle name.
But a good Irish name.
Yeah, I've known Brian for 20 years. He's just a tremendous guy. He was on staff with us for almost 10 years. And in January, he stepped out on his own, and he has his own ministry called Faith Like Birds. And so we're just excited to have him here this morning. Would you guys just welcome
Amen.
Brian to the stage?
Here we go. All right, thanks, buddy. You guys missed it last service. He was talking about some of my weird eating habits and weird tastes and things that I have. And I said, that has absolutely nothing to do with any reason why anybody would want to listen to me. That is...
If you guys would like to support Brian, we're going to be passing baskets right now.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah,
that's good. But your introductions always make me laugh, Adam. So it feels weird, like you're a guest speaker in your home. But I always like being here, love being here. And for those of you that didn't know or hadn't heard, Josh Wood, who was originally scheduled to be here and actually speak in my stead, I'm just pitch hitting basically for him. He was in the States and he's from Australia, and he was kind of going to be doing like a tour, and he was going to be traveling around ministering, and he had brain surgery to remove a tumor. And he's fine. As far as I know, he's doing well. His family's doing well. He's recovering well. So Adam asked me to come, and I said, yeah. I said, I have this date open, so I said, I'd love to. And we'll actually be here next week, actually doing worship with Heather and Mike, so I'm excited about that as well. Lindsay, I gave Ashley a shout-out. Are you videoing me right now to see if I'll do it? Okay, I'll do it now quick then. All right, so Ashley Grady, who, gosh, man, years ago, she was a babysitter for when the twins were, she was always at my house helping Nicole with the twins. Long story short, she's a high school student here at the church, and she has her own Instagram TV show called Microwaving with Ashley. It is, I tune in every time it's on, even if it's just for 10 minutes. It is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. She is changing the way we cook. She is changing American cuisine with the microwave. So everything, like we're just chanting, microwave, microwave, microwave. We just want to see everything get into the microwave, even though some things don't belong in the microwave. Anyway, I told her I'd give her a shout out. And she's on at 9 o'clock. There's usually a new show every day at 9 o'clock, but she's on vacation. But I told her, I said, it is my goal to make this girl famous, man. I'm telling you, I know it sounds silly. I see that this thing can actually become something because it's so silly. It's so awesome. So she's having guests come on and stuff. So hopefully I'll be a guest on the show at one point in time and whipping up some stuff. And so we're actually going to be selling some T-shirts of hers. It's so funny, man. I created this graphic. It's just this like clip arty looking microwave, and underneath it's this hashtag that says microwaving with Ashley, because we're doing this, you guys saw, you heard me talk about it in the video announcements about this youth crusade coming up, and I just want to take a little bit of time to reference that. So I love you, Ash, and it'll be good. But I'm telling you guys, for those of you that have just now heard about that event for the first time, the shout, it was with a loud voice that Jesus called Lazarus from death to life, and it was with a loud voice that he cried out and he said, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. So this is a cry to teenagers, 6th grade all the way up to 20 years old. I know that's not necessarily a teenager once you reach that point, young adult. And what happened was on May 27th of this year, I was watching a video and the Lord dropped it in my heart and he said, Youth Crusades. And I gave the Lord my yes, and I told him, I said, I'll do it because frankly, I don't want anybody else doing it. I want to be obedient to that. And what we are seeing happen, I'm telling you guys, I want to see kids saved, set free, and on fire by the thousands. I am okay with doing meetings, and I've done them where there's 5, there's 8, there's 10, there's 20, there's 30. The largest I think I ever did was around 200, which was up in Williamsport. I'm okay with that. I want to see stadiums packed with kids, literally coming to the Lord. There's a stadium movement that's happening in America right now, and it's not because people have a need to see tons of people in a meeting. It's just whatever's the most effective way, however we can affect the world the greatest, I'm all about it. So the Lord put that on my heart, and I'm telling you, the amount of grace, favor, and just the hand of the Lord that's on this event. I mean, I'm telling you, you can ask anybody on staff. I can't make this stuff up. I was talking about it in West Virginia, just sharing my heart. I had some kids along with me. I take kids along with me when I travel because I'm trying to set them up to do ministry. And these events, these shout events, I want them all to be student-led. I'm telling you, SB, I haven't talked to you about it yet, but I wouldn't mind you being the MC for the event coming up in October, like doing the welcome and everything else. And because I believe in these kids, guys, like I'm telling you, like they're going to do the ministry, they're going to do the behind-the-scenes stuff, the admin stuff, all that stuff. And So I'm excited, but I was talking about it in West Virginia, and a guy comes up to me. You don't know him. He doesn't come here. He is paying for the whole thing. He's paying for Pop and John. I know you guys don't know him, but check him out on YouTube. That's a little unknown fact about me. I love watching that stuff. I love watching those kinds of people dance. He was on World of Dance, and but he's flying him out. He's flying his wife out. He and his wife have been trying to get pregnant for a year. And he said, would you mind coming around me and praying for me when I'm with you guys? I'm like, buddy, let me tell you a story. And I talked about my wife and I, how she was told at 17 she'll never have kids, and she's got 4. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I'll fly his wife out on my own dime if I have to. So I shared my heart with this guy. He's like, I'll fly her, I'll fly him, I'll pay for his hotel, I'll pay his honorarium. There are things that are happening. Literally, things are firing on all cylinders. So many people are coming together out of the woodwork saying, I want to help, I want to participate, I want to sow into that. The guy that's paying for this, he said to me, he goes, I don't even know if you realize this. He's like, but what you're wanting to do and what you're committing to do all around this nation, it's not just here at Praise. The space is limited. So if you're a teen or you have friends you want to invite, you need to invite them. They need to sign up because max capacity is 250. And if we hit that, then we'll go to 300, but we're not going to go beyond that. This is the beta test. We're going to find out whether or not, I know I don't have to find out. I really believe God's on it. But the gentleman said to me, he said, whether you realize this or not, he said, I don't know. But he said, what you're wanting to do, he said, man, I'm telling you, it's like a wave out at sea that hasn't crested yet, but I see it cresting, and I want to be on that surfboard when it hits, and I'm sewing into this thing, and I believe in it. Because he said to me, he goes, I can't do what you're doing. And he's like, but I'm sending my kids, because he's from the Washington, PA area. It's where his family lives. So we've got people probably coming from out of town. We've got rooms blocked off up at Heritage Hills and stuff, because we are believing God to pack this room and for kids to literally get touched. And listen, guys, you know this. I was joking in the first service about this, but our kids, like we really feel like bringing somebody like this guy out that's this professional dancer. Your kids aren't watching sitcoms anymore, guys. They're not watching The Cosby Show. And I threw Three's Company out there, and I said, I don't even know why that came to mind. Don't watch that show. It's weird. They're guys living with 2 women. You're not supposed to watch that stuff. But so my point is, we really feel like this is strategic because a lot of times what we do as Christians, we think in a Christian box and we say, well, I'll bring this big speaker out. I'll bring Todd White, or I'll bring Daniel Kalenda, or I'll bring this individual. And I'm telling you, unbelieving kids aren't going to come out and hear that. But they will come if they recognize somebody that they know and they've seen online or on the internet. He's like the bait on the hook that I believe God's going to use to draw in here. I was just talking to Riley Jacobs is a dancer. I said, Riley, we got to get your dance troupe here. She's like, I already got 8 people lined up that are already going to come out. And I said, I love that. And it's an opportunity for our youth to minister to their peers. And the reason why I want them being the ones behind it is when their peers see them leading it. Like coming up and I told some of them, I said, I don't need you to preach for 40 minutes or 35 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. I said, but I want some of you to get up and you're going to testify this is who I was, this is who I am now. This is what I used to do, this is what I do now. This is why I burn for the Lord. Because it's one thing to hear it from me, and that's fine, but when they see their peers doing it, and that it's real, that's going to change everything. So I am out of my mind. You have no idea how excited I am for these. And not just to do it here, but to do it all over the world. So if you guys wouldn't mind, just please keep that in prayer. And that's October 4th and 5th. And like I said, make sure you guys register. So the first service, I jokingly said at the end, I said, and it's not to put pressure on me. In fact, all I want to do this morning is take the pressure off of you. That's my goal. And I really believe, guys, my wife had a vision 2 months ago. And she had a vision of me, and I was wearing a fisherman's vest. For those of you that fish, you know what it is I'm talking about, lures, all that different stuff. Andy knows. And she said, in all the pockets were lead weights, and you were really weighed down. And when she told me that, I was like, not me. Sometimes the Lord knows things about you that you haven't come to the conclusion about yet yourself. And so when my wife told me that, I was like, and I had to do a little soul searching, and it was then that the Lord showed me something that I didn't realize I was struggling with, because I will tell you right now, trying and pressure and striving, if I'm honest, makes a lot of sense to me. And I am more familiar with that than I am with letting go and letting grace do what it's supposed to do. So this is what I want to talk to you guys about today, because what was happening was, as I was traveling around doing ministry, itinerant ministry, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to say things the right way, to do things the right way, to work up a move of the Lord. And you can't work up a move of the Lord. There's nothing you can do by flesh that can only be accomplished by the Spirit and the grace of God. So one of the first comments I made during first service was this. In the Old Testament, in the Old Covenant, you guys we're in a new, and the Bible calls a better covenant. Would you agree with that? That's inaugurated not by the blood of bulls and goats, which keeps the consciousness of sin and what you're not in front of you, because you had to keep that offering going every year. You are now in a better covenant, inaugurated through the once and for all shed blood of Jesus, who now stands as the high priest, who went and performed everything in the heavens, what the high priest did on earth, and is seated at the right hand of God on the mercy seat, and his blood is speaking better word than anything else. Would you agree with that? All right, now listen. Yeah, we clap to that, but I'm telling you, I see a lot of Christians in this life, and I was one of them, that there's all these verses that talk about he who the Son sets free is free indeed. Verses like, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. Verses like, it was for freedom's sake, Galatians 5:1, that Jesus came to get us free. Verses like Isaiah 61, he came to set captives free and open prison doors. And yet I see a lot of Christians struggling and bound. And they're not free. And I'm not talking about sin. I'm not talking about like there's this, and some of that's true. There are some Christians that are still caught in a compulsion, caught in something that their heart doesn't have an agreement with. But I'm talking primarily about people that are just frustrated with themselves, can't get beyond their own opinion of themselves, have a standard that when they miss the mark, they get disappointed, and they feel like, and because they're unsure of their own opinion of themselves, and they feel like they're disqualified. But the only reason why you feel that way, ladies and gentlemen, is because you actually care. But the enemy, he's so sly, and we're not supposed to be ignorant of his schemes. There's one of two responses that's typically happening. And I believe the one should be that we should absolutely rejoice that when we feel like we miss the mark of our desire to live for him, to be holy, to live right, to do what he's asked us to do, guys, it's a miracle that you even care about that. There was a day and time where you didn't. But like the prophet said in Ezekiel, that God was going to take out a heart of stone and replace it with a heart of flesh. The dead, calloused heart, hardened by sin, is no longer there. Your heart is now alive and has the capacity to feel what it could never feel before. One of the greatest things that happened when you got saved was you received the capacity to care. God wrote his laws, Hebrews 8 and 9, on your heart and on your mind. That's why the true Christian isn't waking up going, I wonder how I can do that and get away with that. I guarantee you, if you're truly saved, that's not you in this room. But what has happened is now your heart is alive. Now your heart cares. I have 4 things that I want more than anything else in this life. When I got baptized in the Spirit, I remember thinking to myself, I want to see the sick healed. I want to see demons come out. I want to see the dead raised. I want my shadow to heal people like Peter's did. I could care less about that stuff. I used to care. Now I don't. What I do care about is having a pure and clean heart. And I understand I can't give that to myself. Now, I'm going to back up and make this statement before I tell you the other 3 things that I want. When you got saved, you were sanctified according to the Bible. What I mean by that is what the old covenant couldn't do because of the law, Jesus did in the flesh according to Romans 8. Man's works ceased when the new covenant came in. It's really important that we understand the covenant you and I are a part of. That means the things that they used to do in the Old Testament to be right with God, you can't You can't. All have sinned and fallen short. Every single thing that people did was like a filthy rag before God. Nobody stood right before him. Righteousness is only imputed through Jesus. He did what we failed to do as a human being. He did in the likeness of sinful flesh. And because of that, when he said, "It is finished," the work he came to do was done. And at the same time, your work ceased. It's not about you living holy or living right. That's not what qualifies you. In the new covenant, it's all about the Holy Spirit's work in you and through you. That's called co-laboring. Are you guys with me? Because oftentimes then, what happens is you actually want to live right and to do right. And so now, when you miss that mark, so I told you, I want a pure heart, I want his attitude, I want to love him with every fiber of my being, and I want his humility. Do you think he wants that for me? Come on, think with me. That means his desire and my desire have kissed. Now what's happening is I understand. See, I want to take the pressure off. So Ken, I'm going to have you bring up that Romans 5 verse here in a moment. What used to happen for me was when I felt like I failed in those areas, I would feel very disappointed, very frustrated, unsure of my own opinion of myself, and therefore unsure of his opinion of me. And so what happens is, and I'll tell you right now, if when you miss the mark, you immediately can't enjoy intimacy with God, then you still to a degree believe that your standing with him is based on what you're doing. Are you following me? That has zero to do with New Covenant teaching. If anything, what the New Covenant shows us is it's not about behaving, it's about beholding. You now, in this New Covenant, according to 2 Corinthians 3, now with an unveiled face, the glory of the old covenant, it had a glory because it came from God. The glory of the old covenant, which was based on your ability, apart from the Spirit of God, to follow certain rules, is now gone. You and I now stand in the finished work of Jesus, and the more we understand and see that and believe that, and understand that he who began a good work is finishing it, you're not. It's all by his Spirit and his grace now. That does not mean I'm like, well, whatever, and God will change me when he wants to change me. I'm not talking about that kind of grace. I'm not talking about people that are practicing willful sin, because if you're doing that, there needs to be an adjustment there. You need to realize you weren't created for that, and you're on a dangerous trajectory if you continue down that road. I'm talking about people whose hearts have genuinely changed, and they want to do right, and when they miss the mark, if they're not careful, they fall right back into condemnation again. I'm okay with us, well, here's the thing. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 3 or 4, he said, I don't examine myself. He said, it's not a big deal if you examine me, writing to the Corinthians, but it's God who examines me. The problem is when you examine yourself, you're taking your own test and you're grading your own paper. And you might be giving and assigning yourself a grade that God is not assigning you, and based on the grade you receive determines whether or not you can draw near to him. But 2 Corinthians 3 is clear that because we're in a better covenant, the old is gone, the new has come, and now we, with an unveiled face, the veil was a veil that Moses used to put over his face because that wasn't the glory that was going to change people. He veiled himself because he didn't want people looking at an inferior glory. The greater glory has come through what Jesus did on the cross. Are you following me? What the law couldn't do, Jesus did, and now we get to enter into that. But the eyes of our heart, which is the eyes of our faith, have to see that. See, I can preach absolute truth to you this morning. Unless God comes and opens the eyes of your heart, which Paul prays for in Ephesians 1, it doesn't matter. It's going to bounce right off of you and you'll receive no benefit from it. But if you were to humble yourself and say, Lord, I hear an invitation to greater freedom with you right now, and I desperately need to understand because he's speaking directly to me, because a lot of times when I mess up, I feel like I can't even get near you. And a lot of times when I mess up, I put myself, sometimes we don't even realize we're doing this. It's unconscious. Well, when I stop doing that for so long, then I feel like God is proud of me again. Guys, It is a huge deal that your heart groans, grieves, that you actually missed the mark. So 2 Corinthians 3, we now, with an unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror, do you hear me? Beholding the image, the glory of God. It's about intimacy and fellowship with Him, not with what has yet to change or what you're trying to fix. Now watch. If all you're doing is examining yourself, you're probably only aware of what's wrong. And when you're aware of what's wrong and what has yet to change, the Lord said it to me like this. I'm in relationship with my wife, God love her. She was here I love her so much. We're 15 years we've been married. If all I did was when I was with Nicole was constantly think about where I was missing it as a husband, I would never enjoy my wife. Why? Because I'm constantly thinking about my mistakes. And you know what? She can't enjoy me because I'm not there. And we'll call this prayer, and we'll call this intimacy. So then we come groveling to the Lord. And all the while, His heart is overwhelmed with joy and thanksgiving that your heart has changed and this bothers you. But rather than rejoicing and saying, Father, I'm so thankful that my heart's awake, it's alive, it's seeing things that it's never seen before. You've changed me, and I'm thankful, God, that this has nothing to do with my strength, it has everything to do with yours. You called me to delight in you, and you would give me the desire of your heart. Now you tell me how you're going to delight in Him if all you're thinking about is where you're missing it. Well, we call that prayer. So if I'm coming to the Lord, I'm like, geez, God, I'm still getting offended. I still struggle with this area in my life. I don't understand why you're not changing, and I keep pleading with you and begging you. And we call that faith. That has zero to do with faith. That has everything to do with a person aware of a problem and is scrambling and is trying to get the Lord to fix it, where all the Lord is wanting you to do is to realize that in your strength you can't, but by faith you believe that He can. And when you see that, that causes you to go lower, and His grace is going to come and change that reality. I'm going to say that again. The Lord said to me one day, it was a phrase, He didn't say it, it was a phrase that rose up in me, I can't, but I have faith that He can. That's the Christian life. And when you recognize that you can't give yourself what you want, when you can't stop what you want to see stopped, when you can't change what you can't, when you can't change what you want to see changed, and you realize by faith that you can't, and you realize by faith, because the eyes of your heart have opened, you believe by faith that He can, that causes you to go low before Him. Humility and faith work in tandem. Just in the same way pride and a religious spirit work in tandem. So when I see that, I go low, and grace is a never-ending stream to the ones who go low. There is so much freedom in what I'm trying to explain to you right now that I'm praying, even as I'm up here talking, that you understand it. For you to come to the conclusion that you can't stop what you want to stop. And the fact that you see, and some people think like, well, that sounds like that gives me permission to keep doing what I'm doing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about taking advantage of grace. I'm talking about you live in the light as Christ is in the light. And what I mean by that is if you trip up and you've missed the mark, you're confessional before God. You're not trying to get away with that. You're confessional before your friends and the people in your close circle. But you realize you can't. And I have yet to find the person that has ever used language like, well, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm just going to try harder. I'm going to adjust that. I'll get more accountability in my life. I've never seen any of that kill desire. Ever. In fact, the more aware of what's wrong, the more you stir up those passions to do what's wrong. Colossians 2 says it's not about don't taste, don't do that, don't do this. That sounds like it's right, but it's more law. It's more, and you only kill the desire of the flesh, which is what we're up against, when you understand that grace and Christ's finished work does that. You know this, you couldn't even save yourself, but when you released faith in Him, what did grace come and do? It saved you, according to Ephesians 2. So why does it stop there? It doesn't stop there. Can you throw that verse up there for me, Ken? So now, you're not releasing faith in your ability to change yourself. It's in His ability. So you got sanctified when you got saved, meaning this, you are now justified before the Lord. It's just as if you never sinned. That's actually just before this verse here. You now have peace with God. You now are a new creation. That's what it means to be sanctified. There's a holiness that took place. There's a holiness we're working out and that we're growing in. That's what it means to pursue sanctification. But that's not because you're trying hard to do that. That's because you realize you can't. By faith, you believe He can. And because of that, you go low, and grace makes that your reality. So, Paul says in Romans 5:10, "For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of His Son," let's not just stop there, guys. Some people just stop at the cross. They're grateful they're going to heaven one day. I am too. You were an enemy. You were hostile in mind, Colossians 1 says. You weren't thinking God. Before you got saved, you were living for yourself. You had zero interest in Jesus being king. To be reconciled means that those that were once enemies are now friends. But then he goes on to say much more. Having been reconciled, we shall be saved by His life. But he's not talking about going to heaven. That's answered through the reconciliation. To be saved by His life means Christ is alive in you, finishing what He started. You can't do it. But what the enemy knows is if he can get you feeling disqualified. Guys, if Peter was not disqualified when he denied the Lord 3 times, and Jesus didn't show up and say, "Told you would do that." I don't know why I ever picked you in the first place. Should have listened to you back in Luke 5 when you said you were a sinful man. I don't know what I was thinking. Did he say that? No. If he wasn't disqualified, but what happened? Peter cared. His heart grieved. Jesus knew that. That's why He said, "I'm praying for you. Then when you're restored, go get your friends. Go get your brothers." Listen, you're not disqualified. You're not cut off. God's not disappointed because you mess up, because you got offended at your spouse and you spoke some kind of mean, cutting remark. Man, if you know you did that, thank God that you're aware of it and that your heart grieved, and go make amends and ask for forgiveness and walk in the light. Walking in the light doesn't necessarily mean perfection. It means to walk vulnerable, open book. I'm not hiding anything. If you're hiding, that's a problem. You have to get to the place where, listen, guys, you hear me say it all the time, especially if you're in my school. The Christian life is not lived in your strength, it's lived in your surrender. There's beauty and freedom in letting go. There is not one addiction I ever had in my life that I beat on my own. And in fact, the best that AA and NA can do is encourage you in your strength to attend meetings. Make sure you have accountability. Follow these steps. And at best, you're managing the problem. But what you think you're doing on your own strength, you got to maintain in your strength. Where is there freedom and rest in that? There isn't any. If it's still about you and what you have to do and what you can overcome. So if by faith you were saved by grace, by faith you'll be changed by grace. In fact, Ken, I'm sorry, I'm going to read this verse out of Hebrews 13. I know I couldn't give you the immediate address to it, but I want you to see this. It's verse 9, Ken, Hebrews 13, verse 9. The Marvel Duos tag team, and it's Captain America, Ken Iser, and Thor, Brian Connolly up here. We're tag team in this thing. Now watch this. This is so good. Do not be carried away by varied and strange teachings. There's a lot of teachings out there that want to put a very heavy yoke on you. It's very religious. It's about what you're doing. And some guys, can I tell you something? The fact that you're trying reveals that you care. I'm not upset that people are trying. I was one of them. Literally, my heart, listen, God knows the pure in heart will see the Lord. And a lot of times the ones who feel the most violated and feel it the most are the most pure in heart. The problem is when you start doing it in your strength, guess what happens? When you fail, the more you feel that failure than ever before. And the more you start to create more distance from you and the Lord because there's no way He can be proud of you now. Yet we're singing all these songs. He's a good, good Father. How is your intimacy level with God? Do you feel confident to draw near Him? Or do you expect to be punished more than loved? And there is zero amount of self-punishment that's going to accomplish what grace can. You tell me if you've ever seen clay grow arms and mold itself. No, but the potter molds the clay. And it does it by submitting to Him. Thanking Him that He's changed your heart, saying, I can't believe. See, guys, I'm in this sweet spot with the Lord. None of you are talking me out of it. I don't want your yoke of pressure. If I mess up my confessional, is my heart break? Am I honest? Absolutely. Am I hiding? No. I have a very high standard. His name's Jesus. Some people hear this in the wrong ear. Well, he's preaching it's okay to sin. That's not what I'm saying. This is actually going to stop sin. This is what Paul was talking about, saying, should we go on sinning so grace may increase? This is nothing new, guys. This is the same. Paul preached this stuff. Now watch. Don't be carried away by varied and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart. That's what's being sanctified now. Your motives becoming clean, everything coming from a pure place. Loving Him with all of it. To be strengthened by grace, not your to-do list. Not by foods. And what he's talking about is there are people that would say, well, it's okay to have faith in the Lord, but you got to do these other things too. Those who are so occupied were not benefited. So I want to end with this. I'm going to turn to Matthew chapter 11. I'm going to nail this home. This is a very common passage that a lot of you are familiar with. And then we're going to pray and release. Is everybody doing okay still? I feel so alive. I am telling you, all I want to do is I just sit there with him. I'm just like, all I want to do is just look at you. He knows, guys, delight yourself in the Lord. He will give you the desire of your heart. That's the key. You enjoy Him. It's relationship. It's not, how are you going to delight in Him if all you're bringing before Him is, I did it again. He is totally aware of that. He has zero interest in talking to you about what you're beating yourself up about. Let me drive it home even more. The younger brother in Luke 15 came home with his story. I've sinned and I'm no longer worthy. Do you know what the father's answer was? A hug and a kiss. That's what will take care of the issue. He didn't say, yep, I gave you your share. I know what you did with it. Prostitutes. Good choice. Maybe I'll make you one of my hired men. Listen, none of that will change you. Only His embrace, but see, a lot of us aren't letting Him do that because we believe He's so disappointed. He's so frustrated with me. I promise you He's not. If He wasn't with Peter when Peter He did it. Guys, Peter did it. He did it. You're going to do this. No, I'm not. He did it. And his eyes met with his while he did it. That would break almost every one of us in the room. Never feel like we could ever come back. Come to me, all who are, come to who? Who are we coming to? Jesus. All who are weary and heavy laden. Who's that? Everybody who's trying hard. Guys, when we're not delighting, we're trying. I told Adam, I said I could sum it up this message in just one phrase. Stop trying and start believing. When you try in your strength, the worse it gets because you're aware of what you're doing wrong, what needs to change. When you're trying, it's like quicksand, the more you sink. What happens when you struggle in quicksand? The worse it gets. That's what happens when you're wanting to do what only grace can do. When Jesus is talking about setting you free, it's more than just your sins, it's from self-effort too. That's the new covenant. His Spirit in you, working through you, co-laboring. And I will give you rest. Guys, if you're trying hard, you're not at rest. If you're at war with yourself in your soul, you're not at rest. If you're condemning yourself in your mind, you're not at rest. If you believe you can do what grace can do, you're not at rest. And it looks right and it looks religious. But it'll never do what only grace can do. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. A yoke is a wooden beam that people would use to harness two animals together of equal strength. Because if they were of unequal strength, the line wouldn't be plowed straight, or the cart with the load might tip over. So I said this first service, we know that the Bible talks about that Nicole and I, we shouldn't be unequally yoked. And the way that you and the Lord are equally yoked is when you are yoked to His strength and He is yoked to your weakness. That's the only way it works. When you are yoked to His grace and He is yoked to your humility, that's when. Well, I think somebody wrote something like this, that when I'm weak, He is strong. What the church needs a revelation of is its weakness so that it actually humbles itself more and realizes that unless he comes and does it, nothing's going to change. You tell me anything you've enjoyed victory in that had anything to do with your strength. And if it was by your strength, you're maintaining it, trying to quench appetites. How do I know? That person in AA, they take one sip of that bottle, it reopens the door again. Why? Because it had nothing to do with God delivering them. It had everything to do with managing it. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. What did Jesus model more than anything else? He modeled absolute surrender of strength and will and absolute dependence on his Father. I can do nothing on my own initiative. I don't come on my own initiative. The words you hear aren't mine. My teaching is not mine. I'm not here to do my own will. I can do nothing unless I see the Father do it. All he modeled was absolute surrender, and that's what it means to be gentle and humble in heart. Humility is about going low, but you can't go low unless you by faith see that you can't and that he can. And when you see that he can, the lower you go. And you know what? His grace humbles me. The fact that my heart has changed humbles me. I'm like, oh my gosh. And all I'm talking about is you will never outgrow your need for him. Ever. Because the more you grow, Tiffany was saying, the more I see, the more I taste, the more I love, the more I have of him, the more I want, the more I become aware of what he's changing and doing. But I can't do that. I can't, listen, money can't buy a pure heart. And the reason why I say this is I can't look you in the eye and say every motive in my life is clean. I wouldn't even have the audacity to say that. But I can't afford to examine myself to the point of disqualification and condemnation. You're walking it out, and if the Holy Spirit highlights it to you, that's when you change your mind and you keep on trucking, and it's called fathering. And he's loving you in the process and disciplining the ones he loves. For I am gentle and humble in heart. That word gentle in the Old Testament had everything to do with people that were up against an injustice, and they knew that they couldn't overcome it or stop it, and they relied on God to do it. It's the ones who won't live in their strength, but live out of his. You will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. Guys, do you hear that? There is so much freedom in those 3 verses. But it doesn't, listen, if we are yoked to the Lord, if he's here and I'm here, and I believe it's something I can do, then this is all I'm doing. Come on. Come on. And I'm doing it in my strength. And I'm really not plowing a straight line. And I'm probably not going to fulfill what I'm called to do. But I feel like what I'm doing is right, and it looks holy and it looks religious. But it's not. Surrender is pure, holy, and freeing, and that's where true religion is found. You will never do in your strength what only he can do. And I'm telling you, when my wife had that vision, she's like, you have got a lot of weights in your vest. I would have been the first to tell you, no, that's not me. But you look at your relationship with the Lord. How is your intimacy level? That will tell me whether or not you still believe that what you're doing affects this. When he finished it, it's no longer about your work. It's about you entering into it. But you can't unless the eyes of your heart see it. So he is involved every step of the way. And when you see it, the lower you'll go. You'll be absolutely amazed and captivated, which is the word for this year. Absolutely overwhelmed by his beauty and overwhelmed by the how awesome and amazing, how freeing surrender is. That's when you can enjoy him and delight in him because you're not conscious of what's wrong. You're just aware of how amazing he is and he's the one changing it. That's when you can enjoy him. And because of that, then he'll give you the desire of your heart. So I am with him. I'm like, I cannot believe you're purifying me. Because you want it and I want it. I have faith that you can do it and grace is making it happen. That's the Christian life. That's the new covenant. That's freedom. For freedom's sake, he came to get you free. Not just from your sin, but from all your self-effort and trying hard. Amen? Let's stand up, guys. I did it again, man, like a half hour. I was good. I went over 5 minutes, but I'm pretty good. Let's just pray, then we'll let Adam come up, and if he wants to give us any instructions about teams or anything like that, that's fine. Father, Lord, I believe with all my heart I spoke what you wanted me to speak, and now I'm asking and praying that what came out, the truth shared, Lord, would bring increase in their lives. Father, I pray that you would teach us the art of delighting in you, Not being aware of what we did wrong, our mistakes, what has yet to change, but being aware of your presence, your goodness, your awesomeness, your love, because what we behold, we get to become. It's not about trying hard, it's about letting go and surrendering. The grace comes to the humble. And I'm asking and praying that you would deepen our humility, deepen our surrender, so that we may walk out this freedom that's found in your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. Have an awesome Sunday, guys.